Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Derrat, but yeah, you probably already knew that if you're here. What you probably don't know is who this guy is. This fine gentleman who is appearing on your screen in full motion video, unlike, my usual cartoon self. Well, before I tell you his name, just give me a second. There's a couple things that I want to bring up just to sort of set things up. So obviously a lot of you who are watching this video have likely come to my channel on account of my Asperger syndrome videos. While I've received a lot of support and kind comments on those videos from you guys, which I really appreciate, I have received some criticism. And one criticism I've received is that I should offer more resources and support mechanisms for people coming to my channel. And this is a criticism I agree with. So I'm glad that you guys actually brought this up to me. And I thought that I should actually do something constructive in respect to that. So to make a long story short, I got in contact with somebody who has been helping me for a long time with my AS and my ADHD. And seeing as, my thing is making videos, that's why you're here, I thought he and I could put together a video for you all showing how his type of services might be a benefit to some of you, a lot of you, but we'll see. So with all that out of the way, John, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is you do?
Thank you very much, Max. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I loved your videos on AS.
Thanks so much.
Thought they were powerful, meaningful, and very useful for those who have trouble explaining themselves.
Thanks.
My special area is ADHD. I trained as an ADHD coach, and as such, I find myself advocating for people who have trouble explaining themselves and how they don't wish to cause the trouble they seem to cause. They don't intend to misremember things and misplace things and get confused. An ADHD coach like me understands that those things are neurobiological. They're in the way your brain's wired. It pays attention to stuff that interests it. If it doesn't glitter, then it's really difficult for you to make your brain behave itself. So what I do is I help folks get around those issues, work around them, figure out strategies to deal with them, and in the process, strategies to deal with the people around them who give them a hard time. Sorry, long-winded introduction.
No. That was actually a very perfectly concise and informative introduction. And we'll get into the specifics of those general things that you just laid out there in a minute. But before we get to that, I actually had a couple of questions. And I'm actually surprised that I didn't ask you these questions in, the 2 or 3 years that you've actually helped me. What is it that actually made you want to do this job? Because what I've noticed is that you're obviously very good at it and you're very passionate about it, but what actually made you want to go down this career path?
Well, I've always been interested in people as opposed to things, people as opposed to money. I got into teaching at a very early age. I was in grade 9, and I remember saying to myself, second time around in grade 9, anyone could do it better than the crowd that were teaching me. So I figured, I said, I'm going to try. So I decided to become a teacher, and I did that for a couple of decades or so. And in the process, I discovered I was drawn to the gifted and bright, misunderstood students who got in trouble because school was so boring to them. And so I felt, as a teacher, it was my job to make school attractive and interesting to them. So I got along with those gifted people who other people didn't get along with. And anyway, after several other career things, when I had a chance, I discovered the world of ADHD coaching, and it seemed to be exactly what I'd always wanted to do. Talk to those people, help them translate the world to them and their mind to the world. And so this is work that I'll do until I can't work.
Great. Yeah. And it's a very noble thing to do, because anybody who has an interest in great minds throughout human history, I think the most obvious example that I could think of is Einstein. He was a terrible student, but obviously he made some of the greatest contributions to the history of science, and that's probably because he got the resources he needed from people that specialize, and people like you, exactly. Now, one other thing, I could sense, like, even just as we're recording this right now, there's going to be some hesitancy from people in my audience, people who have AS but don't have ADHD. They're like, why should I listen to this when I don't have that? Well, see, the thing is, and you and I discussed this beforehand, is that there is some comorbidity with AS and ADHD and how that spreads across a bunch of different diagnoses. I was just wondering if you could maybe expand upon that.
Of course. There is the approach of looking at the various comorbid conditions. I have clients who have 10 different diagnoses, including PTSD, ASD, OCD, ODD, and on and on. It's an alphabet soup of potentials. But here's another way of looking at it, which attracts me. I'm not a scientist, but it attracts me. Your brains are all different, but there's a kind of a continuum that neurobiology comes out as Tourette's or fetal alcohol syndrome or ADHD or ASD. I have clients who've come to me with one condition and discovered it was more like another. But here's the thing. What they all have in common, regardless of the comorbid labels, is that people are having trouble. They're impacted negatively by the way their brain works. So what happened, I started out as an ADHD coach, but now I find I'm coaching people who have other labels, but their impact on the world and on them gives them difficulty. So in a way, the labels don't quite matter. I've actually had quite a few people with Asperger's come along, and it seems like the same kinds of life strategies work. The diagnosis is different, medications might be different, therapeutic approaches might be different, but coaching is the same, because coaching looks for strengths.
Right.
And where those strengths are, that's where you make up for whatever the problems are.
Right. And that's good, because when you have so many of those different diagnoses, what you want to try and do is you want to try and be as adaptable as you can, and make sure that you can be able to provide a similar service, because of that comorbidity. There's a lot of different ways that addressing these issues can spread out and be helpful if other people happen to have these other diagnoses. Now, I know I said I was going to get into the specifics of what it is that you do. I just have one other thing that I want to bring up. So oftentimes I have a certain type of person coming to my channel and saying, like, oh, you're just making it up so you don't have to change your unacceptable behavior, or, oh, AS doesn't exist, or ADHD doesn't exist, you can get over it. Now, John, seeing as we should always believe what people say in YouTube comment sections, I have to ask, why are you aiding and abetting my garbage behavior?
Why am I?
I'm just joking. Don't worry.
No, do you want me to expand on that?
Yeah,
okay.
Please.
What happens is everybody views things differently. They hear that trauma causes ADHD. They hear it's inherited. They hear it's bad food. So they formulate their own conception of what it is. But it's inconvenient for mom or a spouse to have to be gentle and gracious to someone. Maybe she's always nagged about a particular habit that she doesn't like. And she says, just get over it, you can do better. Actually, sometimes you can't on your own. Now, a coach's work is to find strategies to bridge that divide. But what happens usually is that you try to do things the way people tell you to do them. It doesn't work for you. And I can have a strategy with one client last an hour ago, and that's not going to work for another client in an hour. I have a client, actually a new person just called a few minutes ago, and she has a slightly different problem from everyone else. There's actually a very interesting book which shocked the ADHD world for a minute. It's called this one, 88, right? So, of course, I had to buy it.
Yeah.
And in the back cover here, I underlined, ADHD is not a condition on its own, but rather a symptom complex caused by more than 20 separate conditions. Okay, so he's saying ADHD doesn't exist in the name, and that just really shows you that it's complex. So the title of the book, ADHD Does Not Exist, is cute and attractive, but obviously a whole complex of conditions do exist that have an impact on your brain, so your brain doesn't behave itself. It doesn't do what you want it to do. You have to figure out ways around that.
I swear to everybody that's listening to this right now, like, him holding up, John holding up that book, ADHD Doesn't Exist, that wasn't staged. I just find it so hilarious that I asked him that question about somebody saying ADHD doesn't exist, and there's actually a book that says that. But yeah, I suppose you make a good point, because a lot of people have complex lives enough as it is, that when they encounter something with so many different strands, interconnected strands that you have to understand in order to accommodate somebody, they might be initially apprehensive to that. So it's good that they're, people that can actually provide that basic education, and hopefully, you have had success in that regard, because you've actually helped me out a lot in respect to that. Now, how does one? This is when we actually get into the specifics of what it is that you do. So you said trying to help people cope with the demands of others, people that don't understand. How exactly is it that you do that, or how coaches do that?
If the other person, the third party, doesn't want to talk to us and thinks this is nonsense, I don't believe it, then the client and I will brainstorm and look at cases. Where is the problem? Oh, she thinks you're a great guy, but you won't take out the garbage. The baby's crying, you won't take out the garbage. Why don't you take out the garbage? So we discuss that. Well, I would take out the garbage, but I forget. Okay, well, how can we remember? So we look at little strategies about taking out the garbage. And believe it or not, that's a real case. That a marriage was on the rocks because this guy wouldn't take out the garbage.
Oh, yeah. No, I believe it.
But he wanted to. He just kept forgetting. So we worked out a strategy. So, this is obvious. I can do it now. And sometimes the strategies we work out are really obvious. The purpose of the coaching is to, in that case, find a way to appease the demand of the other without sacrificing your personality, your soul, your character, or whatever. In other cases, the other people involved, family members usually, so sometimes not, will be involved in the conversation. So then we mediate. We discuss as a family, as a group, 3 or 4 of us, sometimes 5. Okay, I hate Harry because he's always leaving soap in the bathtub. Okay, Harry, they got a problem with you. Well, let's do this like a summit, like a negotiation. How can we do this better for them? And how can you actually not ask him to do all this stuff that makes him crazy? So what ADHD does not like is a big list of questions or demands that they're supposed to remember in a sequence when they're doing something else. So the person who has the demands has to learn how to get what they want, and it's not by nagging all the time. It's like we work out what is it that will make this communication going this way actually land, work, have a good impact. Parents will often take the position, oh my God, will he ever do this? Will he ever do that? I told him it's for his own good, and blah, 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 and it goes on and on. And I say, just a second, stop. For 30 years, you've been nagging this guy to comb his hair from the left. You think maybe we'll give that up? Maybe try something else, not worry about the hair or something. So we sort of work out. I advocate for my client, but we work out what the client can do to meet the demands of the other or the other family members. And they sort of everybody wins something. But it's all innate of an underpinning thing which really has to be brought forward. And that is, there is a gentle way to exist in the world, a way whereby you're not hurting others, your values are not all shitty about grabbing stuff for yourself and not helping others. And if you have that kind of posture, like this fellow, the 4 Agreements fellow, or this fellow, Eckhart Tolle, great people, Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 Agreements, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. These guys are spiritually whole and sane and say they don't have to be told how to behave to someone who has a disability. They will automatically respect that person. So if underneath your relationship is one of mutual regard, respect, and kindness, then you will listen with empathy, and it won't be such a big conflict.
Yeah, it's compromise, and that's what everybody says
Yeah,
they want, and you want to come to mutual civil agreements. Sometimes it just
sure.
takes a lot of time, a lot more time and effort to do it than to actually just say it. And I will just say before we move on, everything that John just said about mediating between family members, friends, and his clients. I've actually done a lot of that over the last couple of years, trying to get people to understand what it is that is going on inside my brain. And it's actually worked tremendously for me. It helps people to be a whole lot more understanding, to be a lot more helpful. They'll back off when they need to. They'll come in and help you when they need to. And oftentimes, just having somebody there to keep everything stable is all that's really needed to make sure that conversation goes forward. So that's something that if you're having people out there that are watching this video that are having trouble with that, I highly recommend that you talk to or seek out somebody like John to help you out with that. Now, John, obviously, there's that. But there's also the element of trying to deal with a lot of these issues medically. It's sort of like a scale that you're trying to keep balanced. You got the medical options where you're taking medicine, but you also got therapeutic options and the coaching options. What type of healthcare have you seen work best for people in respect to certain diagnoses like ADHD and AS that you would recommend?
The Centre for ADHD Awareness Canada, CADAC, is the main national body that advocates for ADHD to governments about medication and the like. They recommend a multimodal approach. So if you have ADHD, you need someone who will prescribe stimulant meds, and that would be a psychiatrist or a medical doctor who's willing to look at the clinical practice guidelines for ADHD, and they're not too thick. The charts are online, the guidelines are online. So a medical doctor who happens to hear this can just go online, dial in CADRA, which is the counterpart to CADAC. CADRA is the Canadians, I forget now, but it's an alliance of the doctors who deal with ADHD. And they've come up with clinical practice guidelines. So your family doctor should be at the heart of this to do the gatekeeping and can prescribe. If he or she does not want to, then you need a psychiatrist to do that, or a clinical psychologist to do that. So that's the medical part. There are also therapists who understand ADHD, but not all do. So you have to ask that. Do you deal with ADHD? Are you a therapist who can also coach? Maybe they think they can, but it's a different thing. Therapy is more medical-like than coaching. So, you have to satisfy yourself that a therapist that you're talking to actually will help you with your ADHD. There's times when an occupational therapist can help, especially if you're having issues around work and your mindset around work or your physical characteristics around work or the way you relate to people. There are, what else? Well, coaches that help you with life strategies and workarounds. So coaches are very practical, usually, in approaching taking out the garbage or not killing yourself or getting dinner done on time or whatever it happens to be, but it's a strategic thing. So coaches cover a lot of territory, but it's all about ways and means. Beyond that, many people with ADHD have experienced trauma as a result of the way they are, and who knows which came first. Was it the trauma or whatever? But people who deal with trauma are good. So, for instance, in therapy, if I were going to kinds of therapy, I would go to people who did mind-body stuff, somatic psychotherapists, people who did emotional freedom techniques or EMDR, that kind of thing. I would look at that sort of thing rather than one of the older talk therapies as such. So I think it's important that the mind-body connect on this issue. If a person doesn't have any money and doesn't have time to do all that stuff, it's very smart to then do physical stuff that appeals to them, and it's in the range of, well, a lot of my clients do mixed martial arts. That gives them a sense of reality. That's kind of a natural thing for them. But other ones don't like that, so they like yoga, or they like Tai Chi, or they like Qigong. Anything that gets your body and your mind integrating itself is helpful health-wise, but is also good for this condition. And so I'm always constantly encouraging people to move, and to move in harmony with others. There's some recent research about green, the effect of green on your mind, and ultimately on your mind and your body. So walking outdoors is better than walking indoors. There's that kind of stuff. So healthy activities can actually be a good part of what you do, even if you can't afford to go to all these kinds of therapies. Sorry, I don't mean to go on and on, but there's so many ways you can approach this stuff. Generally speaking, the bottom line is healthy activities are good for you and your ADHD.
Yeah, look, to all the people out there that might be frustrated that I might not be asking a specific question in respect to what can be done. I know you're throwing out things like exercise, and people will be like, oh, I don't like exercise, or that sort of thing. I've asked all these types of concerned questions and qualifying questions to people like John, and more often than not, they're always able to provide me with something else that's directly in line with my needs and wants, and something that won't drive me too crazy. So if you're worried about that, a couple things that you could do. You could either post comments in the comment section of this video, or you can get in contact with John in respect to like his social media or his other contact information, which we'll talk about at the very end of this video. So don't worry about that too much. And then finally, there's just one last thing that I wanted to end off this interview today. Obviously, beyond healthcare and coaching, one thing that a lot of people, especially me, have dealt with that's really, really difficult is trying to find employment and trying to build stable careers that'll make us happy and not drive us to our wits' end. In your experience with the types of clients that you've had, what types of careers have you helped them strive for, and which ones have worked out best for them?
With you, ADHD has trouble with ordinary workplaces where you sit in a cubicle and there's a lot of noise and distraction around you. ADHD likes the outdoors. It likes active, interesting work. If you choose a career that you're passionate about, it's going to be a lot easier for you. If you try to do a career because it pays good, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. I have several clients who are lawyers, and have several clients who are medical doctors. They were passionate about their work. ADHD has nothing to do with stupidity. It's all about brilliance and giftedness. But you must find that niche that excites your passion. So if you want to do something that other people find a little weird, you should do it. If it's being a concert violinist and you whatever. If you want to be a poet and people say you can't make money at poetry, ignore that, because you're not going to be able to work at the Coke bottling plant if it's boring. It's going to make you crazy. So first of all, get in touch with what you want to do. Now, if that is a moot point and you're not even sure, your brain is so mixed up, you don't know, then I highly recommend picking up a copy of Richard Bowles' book, What Color is Your Parachute?
Oh, yeah.
That's a famous, deservedly so, a book he writes every year. Reviews, rewrites every year with the latest, newest stuff. He's wise, he's smart, he's funny, he's compassionate, and a book covers that, and it helps you discover what it is your passion is if you don't know what it is. So I would highly recommend that book, in order to identify your passion. Now, beyond that, folks with ADHD like to be in friendly environments or very active environments. So you can be a surgeon, you can be a combat infantry officer, you can run a business. As long as those things ignite your passion, you'll be fine.
And that's, that's something I agree with so much, because throughout my entire life, I've had tons of jobs, tons of them that I've absolutely hated. But what I've realized now that I actually have a job that does make me want to pull out my hair when I go to it, and I found hobbies that I can actually pour all my energy into. It's really true. It makes me realize how true it is that people who have ADHD or people who have AS, that when they find that one niche that completely encapsulates their attention, they put forward more work and dedication and time towards those things, more than that of the average person. And in that way, they become of true value to to the people that are employing them. And I'm certain that you've had some success in respect to that. Like, do you want to expand on some of the things that you've helped people do just to give people a better idea before we conclude?
Usually it's first off about relationships, how you present yourself, and how you deal with irritations around you. So what we do is we focus on what is strong, what is your quality, what is your characteristic that's best, and use that a lot. Where are you weak? Where are you? You're not so good at typing. Okay, don't apply to be a secretary who types a lot. Where do you have weakness? What your brain is saying is don't do that. And so, in the world of ADHD, you're often finding yourself forcing yourself to do something that it tears you apart to do. So what you want is to steer toward that strong stuff, even if it doesn't pay as well. Even if the work is kind of periodic, you really want to focus on what's strong. That strong is where you belong.
Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, we've gone for almost half an hour, and we've gone through a whole bunch of great stuff. But before we finish, I just wanted to ask John if there's anything else that you wanted to bring up or anything else that you want the people that might be listening to know before we do the final things.
Yeah, one other thing. If any of the people listening can't afford anything much at all, then the really best book for you would be this one, Delivered from Distraction by Hallowell and Rady. This book is a compendium of all the stuff you will want to know. It tells you if you can't take meds, what to do. If you do take meds, which ones do what, and so on and so forth. It's a real great little handy Bible. So that's something you can do for yourself, and it's a great book.
Awesome. Well, listen, John, this has been absolutely fantastic experience. I can't wait for people to watch this video. Guys, honestly, I know I've said it a couple times, but I'll say it again. People like John have been of enormous help to me in the last couple of years, just trying to get myself organized, trying to get my priorities straight, and sort of helping me to reorganize my life and my brain just to make sure that I can be of greatest use to myself and of people around me. And if that sounds like a good idea to you, I highly recommend you get in contact with somebody like John. Now, speaking of which, before we conclude, John, I was just going to ask, would you like to provide people with information about where they can find you online or how they can get in contact with you directly? And we'll make sure we just one other thing. We'll make sure we put all this information at the bottom of the video and also in the description box below. So.
Okay, perfect. One general great place to find coaches like me is the ADHD Coaches Organization, ACO for short. So there's 200 or 300 or maybe more coaches in North America, and that ADHD Coaches Organization has a directory. So if you can't get through to me, you can get through to that organization, and it'll be a description of all the various coaches and how they differ from one another. My contact information is probably best found through my website, johntuckerphd.com. I've also got a toll-free number, 1-800-959-9747. So if you want to talk to me, you can.
Awesome. All right. Well, that'll do it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching, John. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me, and also for suggesting this idea in the first place. I think this will be a great resource for people that come here, and I can pretty much guarantee that there will be people that want to take advantage of this information. So thanks so much, guys, again, and until next time, have a lovely, lovely day. Bye-bye.